drought had been a slow, merciless death. For 8 months the sun had beaten down on the land, leaching the color from the sky and the life from the earth. Caleb Thorne stood at the edge of his property, the wind a hot, dry whisper against his face, feeling the thrum of a different kind of death. The banknotice in his pocket, a stark white rectangle against the faded denim, gave him 10 days. 10 days before the land his father had tamed, the land that carried the Thorne name, was swallowed by the greedy maw of Barnaby Slade. The saloon in Dust Creek was a hive of noise and heat, but Caleb felt only a cold dread settle in his gut. The men inside knew his plight. They'd seen his herd wither to nothing but skin and bone, their ribs like old fence posts against the cracked hide. They'd watched him sell off his saddles, his tools, his last horse. They all knew he was here for one thing: Barnaby Slade's offer. Slade sat at a corner table, his tiny body draped in a suit of fine silk, his gold teeth glinting in the lantern light as he sipped from a glass of rare whiskey. He was a spider in the heart of the web, and every man in the territory owed him something. He had bought up every debt, every mortgage, every failing ranch, and now he had come for the last free man in Dust Creek. "Ezekiel," "Oh," Slade said, his voice a low, oily purr. "I see you have come to your senses." Caleb's throat was dry. He swallowed hard. "My name is Caleb." Slade laughed, a high, cruel sound. "Call yourself whatever you want. You are still a man with nothing, but a man with a name is still a man. You want to save your name? You want to save your land? There is a way, oh." He gestured to a large, imposing woman sitting a few tables away. She wore a simple brown dress, her dark hair pulled back severely, and her face was round and soft. But her eyes held something he couldn't quite read. Not shame, not resignation, something sharper. "This is my ward, Seraphina O'Connell. Marry her, and I'll give you the finest breeding bull in the territory, worth more than your whole worthless ranch." Caleb's mind reeled. He had never met a woman so large, so solid. She sat like a monument of flesh and will, her hands clasped in her lap. He felt the eyes of every man in the saloon burning into his back, their whispers like wasps in his ears. This was the final indignity. "She owns Willing?" Caleb asked quietly. "She's been promised to me since she was a little girl," Slade said, his laugh a cruel sound. "She knows her options. What choice do either of you have now?" Slade's voice was a whisper, but it carried across the room, full of a cruel, mocking triumph. Seraphina O'Connell, the woman who would soon be his wife, looked directly at Caleb. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a strange, knowing glint that seemed to say, "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into." The wedding was a perfunctory affair, a grim farce played out in a small wooden church as dusty as the town itself. The preacher's words blurred together as Caleb's mind fixated on the bull waiting in Slade's barnya, massive specimen of raw power, the last hope for his family's land. "I do," Seraphina said, her voice stronger than he expected. His own voice caught in his throat. He forced the words out, "I do." The ring, a simple silver band, was too small for her finger, but she forced it on anyway, a gesture of stubborn will. When the preacher declared them married, she looked directly at Caleb, that strange glint in her eyes still there. But now it seemed almost amused. The ride to the ranch was silent. The only sounds were the creak of the wagon and the distant howl of coyotes. Caleb kept his eyes on the horizon, the setting sun painting the sky in a final, defiant blaze of orange and purple. He thought about the bull, about the chance to start over, about the price he had just paid for survival. But when they reached his small cabin, Seraphina didn't hesitate. She walked straight to the bedroom, a strange sense of purpose in her posture, not resignation. That's when she turned the key in the lock, trapping them both inside. The small room felt like a cage, the single candle on the nightstand casting dancing shadows across her face. "What are you doing?" Caleb asked, his voice a tight whisper. Seraphina didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the window and pulled the curtain shut. When she turned back to face him, the submissive woman from the church was gone. My name isn't Seraphina O'Connell, she said firmly, and I am not Barnaby Slade's ward. She opened her carpet bag and pulled out a thick roll of papers. My name is Seraphina O'Connell. My sister was the ward, Eleonora. She was the one who was supposed to marry you. She died of a fever 2 years ago. The words hit Caleb like a physical blow. He sank onto the bed's edge, staring at her in disbelief. But why? Because Slade owes me something far more valuable than a bull, Seraphina said, her voice now a low, dangerous growl. He owes me justice. My father and my sister, Eleonora, owned the water rights to Creek Canyon. Slade murdered them 3 years ago, made it look like a riding accident, and when Eleonora found out and she threatened to expose him, he had her poisoned. He thought he'd put an end to her, but he didn't count on me. Caleb's mind raced. You're lying. I have the proof right here, she said, tapping the papers. Witnesses who saw Slade tamper with my father's saddle. Bank records showing he forged the water rights transfer. Everything I need to destroy him. Caleb stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. Then why marry me? Why this charade? Because Slade is paranoid, Seraphina said, moving closer, her eyes intense. He keeps armed guards around him constantly. Never goes anywhere alone. But tonight, thinking his problem ward is safely married off, he'll be celebrating at Coyote's Jaw. She reached into her carpet bag again and pulled out a small glass vial filled with a clear liquid. I need your help making sure he pays for what he's done. The sight of the vial made Caleb's blood run cold. You're not going to kill him. I don't need your help killing him, she said. I need your help making sure he pays for what he's done. I'm not going to leave any traces. I'm going to make sure he's going to die of a heart attack. The trap was perfect, and Caleb finally understood why Seraphina had looked so amused during the ceremony. She hadn't been marrying him. She had been framing him. But what she didn't know was that Caleb had secrets of his own. And when she unlocked that door to leave for Slade's murder, she was going to discover that her perfect plan had one fatal flaw. Caleb watched Seraphina check the small vial one more time, her fingers steady despite the magnitude of what she was planning. He had been expecting this moment for months. Not this exact scenario, but something like it. Something that would finally give him the chance to settle his own score with Barnaby Slade. You're making a mistake, Caleb said quietly. The only mistake I made was trusting that you'd understand. Seraphina moved toward the door, key in hand. Stay here. When they come asking questions tomorrow, tell them your wife went to visit her father one last time, before starting her new life. Seraphina, wait. Caleb's voice was calm, almost gentle. Before you go, there's something you should know about that vial. She froze, her hand on the key. What? It's not poison. Caleb sat back down on the bed, suddenly looking more relaxed than he had all evening. It's colored water with a bit of salt. The medicine man who gave it to you, he works for me. The color drained from Seraphina's face. That's impossible. I bought it from the medicine man in Tombstone. He guaranteed it would kill a man in minutes. He has for 6 months now. Caleb smiled for the first time since the ceremony. Ever since I started tracking down everyone who wanted Slade dead. That bull he gave me as your dowry? It belonged to my family before the drought. Slade bought my debt from the bank and foreclosed early, then had his men steal my cattle in the night. That's how I know you're telling the truth, and I've been watching you. Then why stop me? Why not let me kill him? Seraphina clutched the useless vial, her perfect plan crumbling around her. Because hanging him would be too quick. Caleb walked to the window and looked out toward town. I want him to lose everything slowly, the way he made us lose everything. His land, his cattle, his reputation. The territorial marshal is already on his way. Should arrive tomorrow morning with federal warrants. You used me, Seraphina whispered. We used each other. Caleb unlocked the door. The difference is, my plan doesn't end with either of us swinging from a rope. He looked at her. Slade's reign ends tomorrow, but it ends legally. Just as Seraphina was processing the new information, the sound of horses approaching fast made them both freeze. They're coming for us, Seraphina breathed. Caleb's confidence vanished as he recognized the riders. Slade's men, armed and riding hard toward the cabin. Someone had betrayed them both, and now their carefully laid plans meant nothing. Tonight wasn't going to end with justice or revenge. Tonight was going to end with bloody. The thunder of hooves grew louder as Caleb blew out the candle, plunging the bedroom into darkness. Through the window, he could see torches bobbing in the distance. At least 6 riders coming fast. Seraphina grabbed his arm, her breath shallow with panic. "How did they know?" she whispered. Caleb's mind raced through the possibilities. Someone had told Slade about Seraphina's real identity, about the fake marriage, about everything. But who? The medicine man was loyal. The few people who knew about his investigation were trustworthy. Unless the preacher. Slade owns him, Caleb breathed. What do we do? Seraphina Rebar's grip tightened. The root cellar. Caleb grabbed his rifle from beside the bed. It's hidden under the kitchen floorboards. You take the evidence and hide. No matter what happens, don't come out until morning. What about you? I'm going to give them what they came for. Caleb checked his rifle. Knowing he had 6 shots against 6 men. Not good odds, but he'd faced worse during the war. They want to fight, they'll get one. Seraphina clutched the papers to her chest. Caleb, those men will kill you. Maybe, he said, his voice steady. But if I run now, Slade wins everything. Your father stays dead and unavenged. My family's land stays stolen. Nora's murder goes unpunished. He looked at her in the darkness. I won't let that happen. The horses were close enough now that they could hear Slade's voice shouting orders. Caleb Thorne, Slade boomed across the yard. I know what you've been planning. Come out now and we might let you live long enough to stand trial. Caleb stepped onto his porch, rifle lowered but ready. Evening, Barnaby. Congratulations on the wedding. Your daughter's quite something. Slade's laugh was ugly. That fat cow isn't my daughter and you know it. Where's Seraphina O'Connell? Never heard of her. Caleb kept his voice steady. My wife Eleonora went to bed early. Long day, you understand. Stop playing games. The corrupt Marshal Elias Thorne spurred his horse forward, his badge glinting in the torchlight. We know Seraphina O'Connell killed the real Eleonora 2 years ago. We know she's been planning to murder Mr. Slade, and we know you've been helping her. The betrayal hit Caleb like a physical blow. The Marshal wasn't here to arrest Slade. He was working with him. Every piece of evidence Caleb had gathered, every witness he'd found, every careful plan he'd made over the past 6 months had been reported directly to the man he was trying to destroy. You're all on his payroll, Caleb said quietly. Smart man, Slade dismounted, pulling his own rifle. Did you really think you could outsmart me? I've owned this territory for 20 years. I know about every move before it's made. But as Slade stepped closer, confident in his victory, he made the same mistake he'd made with Nora. He underestimated the desperation of a man with nothing left to lose. Caleb raised his rifle, but he wasn't aiming at the man who destroyed his life. Instead, he pointed the barrel directly at the torch in Slade's hand. You made one mistake, Barnaby, Caleb said, his finger on the trigger. You assumed I was planning to fight fair. Caleb fired and the torch exploded in a shower of sparks. The burning oil splattered across Slade's shirt, sending him stumbling backward, beating at the flames. In the chaos and darkness, Caleb dove behind the water trough. The corrupt Marshal shouted orders, but before anyone could react, the thunder of approaching horses filled the air. Different horses, federal horses. The real Marshal, Gideon Stone, arrived with 6 federal deputies, their badges gleaming in the moonlight. Drop your weapons, Marshal Stone commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. This is a federal investigation. The corrupt Marshal Thorne tried to run, but Seraphina stepped out of the cabin holding a lantern and a thick bundle of papers. She'd never hidden in the cellar. Instead, she'd been signaling the real federal agents with the lantern from the kitchen window, using a code she had learned. Marshal Stone, Seraphina called out clearly, I have documented evidence of murder, fraud, and corruption involving Barnaby Slade and Marshal Thorne. Slade's men threw down their rifles immediately, realizing they'd been caught in a federal trap. The corrupt Marshal Thorne reached for his gun, but Caleb was faster. His shot hit Thorne's hand, sending the weapon flying into the darkness. Seraphina O'Connell has been working with federal investigators for 3 months, Marshal Stone announced as his deputies surrounded Slade's men. Every conversation, every bribe, every threat has been documented. Slade, still smoldering from the burning oil, looked between Seraphina and Caleb with dawning horror. "This was all planned," he whispered. "The marriage was real," Seraphina said, walking to stand beside Caleb. "But Eleanora O'Connell was my sister. When she discovered his crimes and threatened to expose him, he had her poisoned. I've been gathering evidence ever since." Caleb stared at her, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. "Your sister Eleanora was trying to help my family retain the water rights when she uncovered Slade's forgeries. She died protecting people she'd never met. Tonight was justice for her, for your father, for everyone he destroyed." Seraphina's voice was steady, but tears ran down her cheeks. Marshal Stone slapped shackles on Slade's wrists. "Barnaby Slade, you're under arrest for murder, fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Marshal Thorne, you're under arrest for corruption and conspiracy to commit murder." As the federal deputies led the prisoners away, Caleb and Seraphina stood together in the yard. The ranch was still failing. The drought wasn't over, and they were still married to each other under false pretenses. But Slade's reign of terror was finished. "What happens now?" Caleb asked, his voice filled with a quiet hope. Seraphina smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her all day. "Now we rebuild together, the way Eleanora wanted." Caleb looked at the woman who'd married him for revenge and discovered something better. Sometimes the greatest treasures come from the most unexpected places.